Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the YouTube channel of Eoin Colfer. This evening we have two guests, one you might be familiar with and one you're definitely going to be familiar with by the end of this live stream. First up, as part of our panel this evening, we have Eoin Colfer, the best-selling author, of course, of Artemis Fowl, and most recently the Fowl Twins, and of course you probably heard all about his first adult novel earlier in the year, High Fire. And of course, this evening, to celebrate the launch of his upcoming comic book series, Scarehood, we have the acclaimed award-winning artist Nick Roche, who a lot of you guys might know, of course, for his amazing work across multiple Transformers titles with IDW Publishing, and now, of course, Scarehood. And of course, some of you guys might also know him from some of his awesome work on his Monster Motor series, one of which I have here, signed and everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the lovely Eoin Colfer and Nick Roche to our stream, just like magic. And we're all live. How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Wait a minute.
Good evening.
Does that work? Are we actually on the screen now?
Yeah, so everybody now has your lovely visages on YouTube, which is live. You guys are getting lots of little thumbs up already, and you even have a little hello.
I felt them. I could feel them.
Yeah.
It's quite invasive.
That's a different show. That is a different show.
Yeah. It's a different service that we're considering offering.
Yeah, well,
it's been a rough year.
But this pandemic, it's
exactly. We're not ruling anything out.
Yeah. So guys, look at it.
It's a niche market, but I feel there's someone out there.
I feel like you guys. I feel like if anyone's going to crack it, it's going to be you guys. So look at it. It's great to have both of you guys together live on YouTube this evening. It's probably not every day we can have this kind of a catch up. I know you both individually. Myself have been not only fans of you guys over the last number of years, consuming all your lovely work that you keep putting out. Thank you. But you guys actually know each other too. So I thought it'd be an interesting place to start. You're both from Wexford, which, if nobody, some people don't know, is a beautiful little sunny place down the southeast of Ireland. But how did you guys actually meet each other first? Or did you just bump into each other? Do you know each other from each other's work? Or is it a simple matter of walking down the lovely town of Wexford and just bumping into someone?
A lot of Wexford origin stories can and do start that way. And I wish I could sort of say that I was like a student of Owen's and hey, he'd forgotten about me, but I kind of cornered him in a sort of like alleyway one night. Said, "Remember me, sir?" But no, it's nicer than that. It was I was involved in like various theatre groups, anything going. Just give me a part, put me on the stage. And one night, Owen had been conned into like launching the Oyster Lane Theatre groups, kind of show, whatever it was that year. And Owen was getting buzz for like he'd been around for ages at that stage. But he was Artemis had kind of just picking up steam, and I was a bit of a fan. And I don't think I did a good job of quelling that. But so I had done the poster for the show.
Yeah, that's what caught my eye.
I think so.
As I was a big poster fan, believe it or not.
All the posters.
And to prove that, well, I can't really prove it. Well, I can prove it. I can prove how big a poster fan I am if you just. I have two bits of art in my office, and one of them is that. Can you see that at all?
I'm so jealous of it.
Flash Gordon movie. So I love a nice poster. But I remember I used to follow his poster career.
Yeah, I was the poster wonderkind of Wexford Town.
Yeah, you were for a while there. And also, I hate to reveal this live, but I did do like this paternity test. No, I didn't do that.
And it's you, Seamus.
Quickly, next question.
It's a small town, so we have this like very tight artistic community, and if someone is kind of poking their head up, everybody wants to talk to them and see what they're up to. So I think I knew back then that Nick was going to go places. And I don't mean Waterford, although that's where you are, but Transformers, I think that was the first big jump in your career.
It was kind of, and it was like my dream job, and I kind of ended up getting it as my first job, and it was kind of, it's a strange one to kind of have to reevaluate your kind of your parameters after that. But I remember you and I, the first night we kind of got talking in like the Westgate Centre, we ended up talking about comics because we kind of clicked on that, and you were kind of telling me about Hellboy, and I remember you sort of like evangelizing about Mike Mignola and things like that. And like having since met your brothers as well, I've realized that it's kind of you were kind of brought up by like 2000 AD and things like that. And
we were all, and it was really hard to get comics back in. This would have been in the 70s, in the late 70s. And there was, we were especially into, my brother Paul and I, was a year older than me, were into 3 comics, which was Creepy, Eerie, and Vampirella, and they were very hard to get in Ireland. And there was one guy that we knew of. He was on O'Connell Bridge, or just at the end of O'Connell Bridge in Dublin. So whenever my parents would go up to visit relatives, we were let loose on O'Connell Bridge, and you didn't know if he was going to be there. You didn't know if we'd have any new comic books. But it was an adventure to get these. And I don't know if you're familiar with those guys, but they're total classics, and the artwork in them is still fantastic.
Yeah, I think the older I get, the more I realize kind of how influential and how they're, some of the prescribed texts of comics. If you want a well-rounded comics education, it can't just be men in spandex and or women in spandex, So it's but stuff like that, and 2000 AD, even growing up, felt to me big boy comics, and I've never felt like a big boy. Do you
remember? Do either of you remember Action? I think it was called Action, and it was like this super violent.
Yeah.
And it was banned after about 2 months. Right, yeah. It had this like a really violent James Bond called Dredger, and like shark with a hook jaw.
Yeah, hook jaw. Yeah.
Who had a harpoon in his jaw, and so it wasn't bad enough that he was just eating people as a shark. He also had a harpoon, and I just loved all that kind of thing,
Yeah.
But there was a real feeling back then among teachers, and I think the comics aren't literature. My argument always was that comics are literature and art, so you get a 2-for-1 deal. I think that's accepted now. I mean, I think
it feels like it. Yeah.
But I when you started off though, because I always wanted to be a comic book artist.
Yeah.
Just wasn't, never had the skills, but. When you do Transformers, that's the 2 hardest things to draw.
It's ridiculous.
Robots with fingers. Fingers on robots is the hardest thing. You had robots with fingers.
Robots with fingers, but they could turn into cars as well. And they're, I mean, if they turn into horses, that would be just everything. Like that would be horses with fingers that can turn into robot cars. Like that's kind of
Let's make it happen. Let us.
I know. Yeah, why are we giving our ideas away for free?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, come on, guys, keep some.
Seamus, mute this.
Yeah. Some people.
You're in on this now, Seamus.
Take it offline, guys. Okay, let's take it offline. A lot of people
only material, not anything.
A lot of people were actually asking Nick how you actually started with IDW, because there's a lot of young comic book artists and a lot of illustrators and artists like yourself interested in kind of that whole progression for yourself. And I've got another kind of more specific question down the line for you, but just a brief history in terms of how you kind of got involved with that,
Well, the poster career in Wexford wasn't sustainable, and I'd never. There just wasn't enough amateur dramatic.
Me and Owen just didn't big it up enough for you.
Hello Dolly to go around. Exactly, yeah, to kind of keep the wolf from the door. And I'd always wanted to be a comic book artist, and Transformers was my first love. But Transformers had kind of stopped in the 90s, but I had stopped loving loving Transformers in the 90s. Yeah. So you've got a kid who loves Transformers and musical theatre in the 90s. So I just painted a target on my back, So, kind of in early, I didn't ever go to college. I never, I was kind of 16 when I finished my Leaving Cert, which is kind of like our kind of high school kind of exams in Ireland. And I just didn't feel up to it. I kind of got scared off from going to animation college. I got in, but I never went. And so I decided to just kind of chance my arm and try and get through comics, myself. And it wasn't happening. And so, cut to nearly 10 years later, I was like, look, I want to do have a job where I'm drawing for a living, and I want to learn how to do it right. So I'm going to go and study animation. After all, I feel like I am maybe nearly a big boy now. I'm nearly 25, so maybe I can chance it. And so I applied to get into animation college. Around the same time, I made connections with the Big Bang comic shop in Dublin.
Yeah.
They used to be called Third Place, and kind of the family that owned them, the Hendricks, John and Dave Hendrick was involved at the time. Dave Hendrick is a writer, and he and I connected through me visiting that comic shop in Dublin. He came up with he just comes up with so many ideas. He's like a kind of an IP machine. He came up with this idea of an Irish crime comic. That was going to kind of involve, it was like kind of like a lock stock sort of situation, but involving kind of like, gangsters from the north and gangsters from like Dublin.
Yeah.
And he asked me to kind of draw it. It would have been brilliant. I'm not sure I would have been the best fit for it, but it's a great concept. And so he and I were going to publish that independently. Now, at the same time, IDW got the license to Transformers comics from another company that had stopped paying their creators and had lost the license from Hasbro because they were running a shop operation. And this other comic company called IDW Publishing were they're way more indie, and they're a bit more open to lots of different art styles. And because I have a kind of a wonky way of drawing Transformers, they were kind of up for it. And so David, instead of kind of like sort of hanging on to me and saying let's do our comic together, he passed on my portfolio to his contacts within IDW, and within the same day I got a contact from the editor saying, do you want to draw some Transformers for us? So it was one of those sort of kind of overnight sort of like, holy crap, it's happened, I've got my dream job. I've yet to work with Dave since. So
yeah, but those kind of stories are amazing. I mean, the way, Owen, that you got Artemis Fowl, the very first draft of that, into the hands even of an agent and of these publishers is an incredible story as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I do believe that, as Nick said, that just whatever talent you have, you need that little bit of luck at some point. And the old saying that the harder you work, the luckier you get is true. I mean, it's really hard to be lucky if you're don't have your nose to the grindstone. But I certainly was lucky with Artemis. I had done 6 books for O'Brien Press, and which I'd done fine and really well in Ireland. And O'Brien Press are a great publisher, but I needed just to be able to keep writing, because at the end of the day you have to pay the mortgage and feed your family, which I wasn't doing. So I wrote Artemis Fowl, and Jackie said, my wife, you guys both know Jackie, said, you need to get an agent now. So and I didn't really want to get an agent because I felt it'd be rocking the boat, because I had a publisher, and I felt if I got an agent they might drop me, and that's how I felt. But I rang an agent in London. Someone had said to me that you should ring up, and I know now that's the last thing you should do. You're just annoying everybody. But at the time, someone said, no, you ring up. Yeah. You make a personal contact.
You can probably just WhatsApp now.
And they love that. They love when you do that, and they really don't. But I did ring up, and a London agent and an Irish girl answered the phone, Grania. And first of all, she was really happy I could pronounce her name. Started talking, and I laid on Leprechaun, and where is your family from, and how's it going, and maybe you know your uncle, and but eventually she said, listen, send the book to me personally, and if I like it, I'll give it to Sophie. She takes 1 book on holidays, and she's gone on holidays. So I sent it straight away. I think I may have posted it in those days in a padded envelope, and 2 weeks later Sophie was in Dublin and she was signing me up. So, but it was that one connection at that day, ringing that person. I mean, you have to have the product. I think you'd agree with that, Nick. You have to have something that's worth selling. But I have a lot of friends who are great writers or great artists that just never quite got that little touch of luck that Nick got with Transformers and that I got with Artemis Fowl. So there's a lot of right place, right time.
There's a couple of things you kind of mentioned there. One is the Irish kind of connection a little bit, and like there's still that sort of thing of like the Irish abroad, or like on builder site, and you'll bring your brother or your sister in to kind of get a job and stuff. But I mention that kind of in a way because even within comics, there's guys like Declan Shalvey or Will Sliney who are kind of like a few rungs ahead of me, and they'll always sort of kind of like open the door to sort of say, when you come up. But the same as yourself. I mean, you've done that for me. You've always kind of blurbed stuff for me, and you've always given read stuff for me, and that's the same sort of thing. But then there's also the thing of, you said Jackie said, the one who said you need an agent, and I've been in a similar sort of situation kind of with kind of Scarenthood with taking the risk to sort of, because that doesn't pay off until people start buying it. But if it wasn't for my wife going, no, this is the thing that if we're not gonna, if you're not gonna be bringing in X amount of money this year, this is the reason to do it. Do you know? Yeah. And it's kind of having that little bit of belief at home.
It means everything.
It really means everything, because it means it's one less thing to worry about, that kind of, because you're always going to worry that, like, are you doing enough to kind of like pay your own way or in the house, so kind of you're earning your right space, your creative space, your arting space, your drawing space. But when you don't have to worry about that because the person you live with has sort of said, what you're doing is worthwhile, keep doing it. And I think that's the reason why people maybe we know didn't make it, because even going back to like a teenage level, there's people in my class in school were as good or better than me at drawing comics, and comics specifically. And the difference being is that they didn't have they had good parents, but they didn't have parents that were maybe going, I can see what you're doing here, you can do it as long as you want, rent free.
Yeah.
That I had, and kind of would have maybe pushed me and encouraged me in ways to sort of kind of, and that's why maybe they aren't doing what they wanted to do when they were 14,
So there's a different society where you're coming out, like Ireland had never been an affluent country until the 1980s. Like it had always been a poor country. So you're told if you have a chance of a job, or even better, if you can get a pensionable job, you do not step away from that. So I'm possibly in the first group of people who were the first generation whose parents had that little bit of leeway, and they could say, well, why don't you give it a little bit of time? Let's see how it goes for you. And then we were both lucky, and then me, and then you would be the following generation where your parents were saying, actually, Nick, I like the way you've drawn the sun up in the top corner of the picture. That's really good. you should follow that dream. And
it's true, because like you say, we're kind of we're I guess we're that kind of like generation that's kind of, I guess, like 15 years roughly kind of between us, that but it's people like you. So I never kind of identified or kind of cared much for being Irish, or never kind of really, because it felt like you were a little bit sort of like you were the butt of kind of jokes, and there wasn't much Irish representation in, apart from you two, but like in kind of like the media, and especially when we get UK TV, we're not there. And then suddenly in the 90s, that starts to change, and you see, and it's stuff like Father Ted. That's kind of one of the first things I go, oh no, hang on a second, we're doing this better. And all, like Dylan Moran and Darryl Green start going, Tommy Tiernan, they start kind of going to the UK and sort of showing, it's just, there's like the lack of infrastructure in Ireland is the only thing that's holding Irish people back. And then you kind of, you're the one, you're from Wexford, you're from my hometown, and there's other people from Wexford who kind of made it out, like Billy Roach or Pierce Turner, those guys. But because you're the first person who's like working in like science fiction and fantasy, and it's like, oh my god, it's nuts. Like, it's nuts when you see that. Like, and so there's something to be said for that as well. That like, like for the first time, I'm weirdly sort of proud of, like, not that there's never shame involved, but it's you start to become proud of like your connection to kind of like to Wexford or Ireland and things like that.
Well, I think up to then the only Wexford was kind of opera festival and hurling, and if you weren't into opera festival and hurling, then it was kind of left for you. But at the same time, there really was, because we had this, we were both involved in amateur dramatics, so you had that little circle of creativity, and that was always really, really strong. But on the international stage, Wexford didn't have a whole lot. Although I think is Christopher Burgh, you got some link? Is he?
Depends on the day, isn't it? Do you?
I'm not sure.
If you want him to be sure, if you.
I love Spanish Train.
You can't argue with Spanish Train. I'll give you it.
Yes, so that's all.
Man's all right.
That is the only section. But he did. We did a show with Dustin.
Last Christmas, it was fantastic.
And he did we were trying to get celebrity cameos. We got loads, but I have to say, Chris Burgh was absolutely wonderful, and he even jammed Don't Pay the Ferryman.
Oh, it's good.
Unasked, but brilliantly.
Unbelievable.
So he's quite the comedian. So I have a lot of.
On the Chris Burgh sort of like divergence, he does he has a strange line in kind of apocalyptic fire and brimstone, aliens, faces there in your hands, and it's weird. It's weird that, like, obviously you follow the money, so you go for Lady in Red rather than sort of Stygian myths and life and death sort of.
I remember listening to Spaceman Came Traveling. I'm saying, is he saying Jesus was E.T.? Is that the message of that song? I'm trying. I mean, it's a great song, and it's one of the best. Christmas. Irish people do good Christmas number ones.
Yeah,
got it.
Agreed.
Is that a Spaceman Came Traveling, and in 2,000 years I'll be back for my son? I'm not really sure what that's about. I think it's subversive. I think he's a subversive.
So hang on a second. I'm giving you credit, Owen, as being like the first Wexford person to kind of break out on a sci-fi tip, but really, the beginning of the wellspring is the Burgh, isn't it?
The beginning of absolutely. I have
Burgh
now, or what's the story?
I think he's the next person Seamus has to get on.
I'd love it if the Burgh just sort of kind of like slides in.
I was just about to say, and now joining the live stream right now is in fact Chris de Burgh.
I'm glad we were being nice about him.
Yeah,
but people don't
glad
know
you
how
stopped me
big
from
that album was. Like in Ireland in the late 70s, early 80s, Spanish Train was like. It was like our Led Zepp 4, it was absolutely massive, except it had a name on the cover.
Yeah.
That's
true. Mr. My mum and dad didn't own albums. They owned stuff they taped off other people, but one of the few things they had in their house that had been bought was Spanish Train and other stories. So there you go. Yeah,
that was like a million dreams were shattered by Dave Fanning, who would not shut up when we were trying to tape off the radio. He would talk halfway through the song, if someone did that allegedly, because it's probably illegal.
That's so good. So basically, to recap, you guys have a connection of Chris de Burgh, parental encouragement, and a little bit of a look at the Irish, and a bit of fire under you as well, to kind of give you a kind of a boost to go out and grab it as well, which is great. I mean, speaking of, so over the last couple of months, you guys are probably well used to, at this stage, working in isolation and working alone. And maybe you've always kind of worked remotely anyway, really, like, especially for yourself, Nick, as well. Obviously, Owen, you have a place where you write as well, but did it give you more time over the last couple of months of additional isolation, or did that actually in itself kind of start bringing on its own problems as such? You know what I mean? Because you're no longer really alone. Everybody's around you while you're still trying to obviously be by yourself to get work done. So what was the last couple of months like for you guys and your work? We'll start with Nick first.
I'll share first. It wasn't as streamlined as that, because on paper it should have been business as usual here, like, because I've always worked from home, and my wife is a nurse in Crumlin, and so she still travels up there to work, and so she was still up there kind of doing the same hours that she always had done. But the kids were around in the mornings, obviously, because of school, while the school was on but not on. But the space in my head anyway, kind of occupied by lockdown, seemed to kind of sap a lot of kind of like forward momentum I kind of had for work, even though nothing really had changed within the room itself.
Yeah.
The kind of the head had changed and the world had changed a bit. And also with comics for a while, there was a little bit where kind of the industry just kind of stopped because the distribution channels were gone.
Yeah.
Any date, like Scarehood was a one-stage plan to kind of come out in September, but and it's coming out in October, and that's fine. I'm just happy it's coming out. But that was happening. And there was lots of sort of kind of moments where I was like, okay, do I just put Scarehood down and maybe go and get a job doing storyboarding for animation, because like that was kind of going. So it wasn't as productive as it could have been. And because you had so many people so many people learned new kind of the skills during lockdown, and started all their kind of Twitch channels and all these things that just made you. And I'm going.
We should have done that.
And well, I know, but I was too busy going So, and I was getting annoyed by kind of the fact that like my reaction was and not something super productive where here's my comic lockdown diary. It's a personal sort of journey, so for me there was kind of that going on. What could and should have been productive didn't pan out that way.
Never is. And Owen, what was it like for you?
Well, I'm at the very fortunate end of the lockdown in that my kids are older. My Finn is 23 and Sean is 17. So Sean was in transition year, so he didn't have exams. So when everything locked down, like it was a very limited crossover. I mean, the boys don't get up till 12:30. I'm old, so I go to bed at 10. Very short window of them to talk to me. But joking aside, I did find that we had a little bit started to go our own ways a little prematurely, and Finn had been in London, and but so this brought us back together in a really nice way. And we're not fighting, like we're 17 and 23-year-olds. We're not fighting. There's no rows. So it was actually really nice. And I do have this office, which is lovely, and it's in the garden. So when I'm out here, nobody comes out here. Oh, nice. And it's not because they respect my privacy; it's because they don't want to come out here.
Yeah.
To come out here. So I've been really lucky, and I very early on I decided I would have to have a plan to get. So what I thought, I was finding it hard to concentrate on something that would take a year to do because I didn't know how things were going. So what I did instead was I thought, well, I'm going to try and finish up a few small projects that I've had brewing for a few years, and so that's what I did. I did a bit of theatre, even though God knows when it'll get on. And I was doing a picture book with a guy, so and I'm doing a graphic novel as well with Andrew and Gio that Seamus. I don't know, you might have met them, Nick, I'm not sure, but
yeah, I met Andrew, I've met Gio, so
his stuff is amazing. We were able to work on these smaller projects. I don't mean smaller as in what they're worth, but just maybe don't take as much time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't bad, and generally 80% of my life has stayed pretty much the same. It's just it's much harder on kids, I think.
Yeah.
Sean is 17, and when I was 17, I met Jackie, so he's not having that summer. We all had that summer. Like Seamus is a very late bloomer. He only started, a couple of years ago. But most of us had that summer when you're 17, and it's just, maybe you're 17 or maybe you're 18, and that's your summer of love and exploration and whatever. And they're not having that. That is really tough on these kids to not be able to go out there and just hang out with their mates and then go to a disco on a Friday. That's quite tough. Yeah. So I think once you're conscious, I suppose because I deal with young people and I do events with young people, and that was just cut off immediately. So I did miss that. All right.
One thing that you mentioned, Nick, and I think is really interesting from what you're saying there on as well, is that especially with young people, I feel like the distribution channels for some of these things like bookshops, comic book stores over the last couple of months for the most part were shut down anyway. But I still seen a lot of people picking up books, picking up comic books, discover new work, and I've never seen so many people actually talking about what they were reading and sharing what stories they were really enjoying. Is that something that you guys have seen as well over the last number of months? Is there a bit of a groundswell kind of coming back to maybe more physical things?
Yeah, I've kind of seen a little bit of an action, and I've played my own part by consuming more. Kind of like I part of it kind of came from like trying to help out some of the comic shops. Help out like I'm some sort of Christ figure, but making sure that they've got that I'm paying for my order on time, but I'm trying new things to sort of kind of go, well, if I'm ordering this, I want to maybe make the postage costs worth my while. So I was ordering like kind of a few extra graphic novels and trying new things and stuff, and kind of so definitely a bit of that, and I definitely got more in the habit of kind of like reading. Sometimes kind of when you're working on something, you do less consuming, you know, kind of, you know, with me anyway, there's a bit of like an input-output switch, and they don't always kind of coincide. But it did feel that way. It felt like people were kind of, you know, out of support, trying to kind of keep shops, brick and mortar shops, kind of moving and running, and so they're kind of doing it. And then some people just had the time, didn't they? So
yeah, absolutely.
And I think the shops themselves went into overdrive. I mean, they really tried to adapt, and they tried to come up with new ways to get that product to you. You could drive up to a shop and they would bring it, pass it into the car. And I think people respond to that positively. They can see that these are real people and they're really suffering. And, you know, if you can go a little way to meet them, they will deliver the product. But there's also the thing that whenever the world is, or whenever our culture is under pressure, we tend to kind of revert back to a time when we felt comforted. And one of the great comforts is literature, of it, you know, whether it be kids' books or graphic novels or whatever. So, I saw a lot of people. And on myself, I went back and I reread some books I hadn't read in years, just, you know, partly to see where they are as good as I remember. But definitely to immerse myself in a less stressful time.
Yeah, you guys want to give
There's
any
something about
shout
having a
outs?
choice of two books in front of you, and kind of one being one you've read before and is your comfort book, and one being one that you know is good but you haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
And you're almost always going to go for the hug.
Yeah.
You know, the book that, you know, so yeah.
I reread
It's the same with music. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just popping on David Bowie all the time, or Kate Bush, or a bit of Radiohead. And just not really trying anything new at the moment, but
No.
get back there.
What I found really
I always find when I try something new, it's the wrong stuff.
Yeah. That can happen. What I found doesn't really work is Radiohead and Treasure Island. By the way, there's a little bit. If you try listening to that and try reading it, it gets a little bit too much, you know.
Just before lockdown, I read Endurance, the book about the trip to the Antarctic with Shackleton and Tom Crean and stuff like that. Yeah. And it just made me realize just that I wasn't cut out for anything. And then lockdown happened, and it was just. But when you started saying that, I was listening to Anna Meredith, she does kind of like electronic-y sort of kind of stompy, sort of thrusting Godzilla sort of kind of sounding music. And when you're reading that to sort of like, you know, men shoving a boat across the ice, it's nice when you can kind of like match up your soundtrack to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you might have discovered there something
what kind of comic book is going to come out of that experience? It'll be
tune in September 2021. We'll find out.
Please do it, Nick. Please. All right, so that brings us nicely on to talking about Scarehood. Right, so these are the facts, Nick. Halloween 2020 is when it is being published by IDW. You are the writer and artist on Scarehood, and it is, of course, coloured by the amazing Chris O'Halloran, like you've already mentioned, who people might know for his work on The Immortal Hulk. So you're going from action. Oh, sorry, do you want to add something there?
No, I was going to say, I think maybe we talked about that off camera. So Chris is on Immortal Hulk. Chris is amazing. He's a Cork colorist and artist, and I was very lucky to kind of get him kind of to agree to Scarenthood, because it's been a long kind of brewing process early on, and now he's a comics Chris O'Halloran who colors Ice Cream Man and Immortal Hulk for Marvel, and a dozen other kind of like, you know, Image and indie titles, and he's a darling and everyone loves him, so I'm lucky to have him.
That's amazing. So we've got a great lineup behind it. So you're going from action to mystery / horror. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Scarehood for anybody who hasn't read about it yet?
So, welcome. We're here today to talk about Scarehood. Scarehood is a comic about a group of parents of preschoolers who, when the kids are in school, the parents are off ghost hunting, but they've got to be back by lunchtime to pick up their kids. And it's basically the Goonies grown up, but with mortgages, or a cross between Catastrophe and Stranger Things. It's kind of, and it's
a great idea.
Yeah, I hope so. And it just came out of kind of from me. You know, my kids became the age. My daughter is 7 now, but once she kind of was 2 and 3, she's starting to go to play school. And suddenly, after an adulthood of just hanging out with the same people you've known for 20 years, you've got to meet new people, and your kids can get on with the people in their class much easier and quicker than you can get on with the strangers standing at the school gates. And so the socializing sort of becomes sort of like coffee, house prices, and then you're sort of like, oh, what would be more interesting to do with these? Go ghost hunting, see if we can defeat a demon, instead of kind of just sort of going, oh yeah, so when are swimming lessons this week? So
So
that's kind of it.
It was literally going to be one of my first questions, which was where did this idea kind of grow from? Was it something that, I mean, you kind of had shelved for a while, or was it kind of with your own parenthood? Was that kind of seed sown? Obviously, like you've just
100%, just from being a parent who's doing this, because I always felt that like if I got a chance to sort of devote my own time to creating my own thing, it would be heavy science fiction-y fantasy. There would definitely be robots. There'd probably be some time travel. There'd be spaceships. And I still have that idea. That's something I can still do, and at least the merchandise from that might sell, because no one wants to buy an action figure of a parent with a cappuccino. Do you know? So
please though, please,
well, maybe they do.
So good.
I'd say, yeah,
maybe. But so it was. But once I kind of. That idea was in the back of my head, or a superhero thing, and then kind of like the idea of sort of like, well, what would you do in the mornings if you faced with the chance of going back to work, or what would you rather be doing while your kid's in school, and so the ghost hunting thing, and that it just stayed with me, and just it became more and more apparent that I had less and less in common with a lot of the parents, but then there are some that you do click with, and kind of you kind of like when in the first preschool that my daughter was in and stuff, like I kind of got talking to a guy who like writes short stories and stuff like that, and then because we moved around a little bit, and the second school was I started talking to someone like who blogs and things like that, and I kind of try you kind of find the people who you do kind of connect with. At the moment I'm kind of like hanging out with mums that like work in stained glass art, or create synthwave music and stuff like that, and you feel like you're the cool gang, but you're like the other parents are obviously going, who are they dweebs, so so it's kind of about finding that adult isolation thing of kind of thinking you've made all the friends you're ever going to have, and then
you don't want any more friends. That's the thing.
I don't need them. I don't have time. I can't let any more people
down. If I make a friend now, they have to be.
Sorry,
we have to get through each other's defenses accidentally.
Just all the people asking and the questions in the comments box. No, you can't be Nick's friend. He's already reached his limit.
Yeah.
If I fall out horribly with anyone on the school run, and look, could happen.
Yeah.
But I need them now for my fodder for if we get a second series, So.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I really like about Scarehood, it's one of those dream one-word titles where you nearly don't have to say anymore. It's like Scarehood, image, done.
So good.
Yeah. People say, "Oh yeah, I know what this is. I was a parent."
Yeah.
So obviously, parents involved in some kind of ghostly activity. It's fantastic.
Excellent.
It's great.
Do we have a graphic, or do we have any? Can we show people what it looks like? And you can hold up a cover. Nick, do you have something there?
I don't have anything printed. I can share it.
Oh, right. We don't have any printed.
What you call it?
Not yet.
Oh, what I'm gonna do, so I have the cover here, Nick, and I have some of the sample pages that were actually released that I'm going to share, if that's okay.
Please do that, yeah.
So
because basically the idea is that that something has gone wrong in the life of one father and his daughter and stuff, and he's found himself alone, kind of looking after this kid, and then something else brings him into contact and bonds him with some of the other parents, that they wake up something underneath the school that the kid goes to, the preschool that the kid goes to, that maybe they shouldn't have, and this kind of finds its way into all their lives, and that's kind of where it is. But it wasn't originally going to be called Scarentood. That came way late in the day, and I refused to give away the title it was going to be, because it's not good.
Was it Stranger Things? Was it Stranger Things?
Yeah, damn it, it was Stranger Things. It was it was something I might use it for, like if we end up getting a second series, I can use this. I can use that title as the title for this first kind of arc, but otherwise it'll just be known as Scarehood. But it's like that. It's like one of those sort of things where it's kind of I believed in the project, and I'd drawn it was drawn and written, and then I came up with the name, and then it was just like, I think this might work. And it's weird, the difference between, it's that gear change between people kind of latching onto it, I think. So
yeah, absolutely. A good name is just invaluable. If you get that right name, it's worth a lot. So congratulations anyway. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, congratulations.
And it's so funny. It's so funny as well.
And
that's something you don't often get with kind of a spooky story. You get a lot of people trying to be funny in spooky stories, and they think what's funny is someone's head being blasted off, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, that just happened." That kind of glib thing, which I don't find very funny. It's too easy. But this genuinely hilarious.
Yeah,
Thanks, that means a lot.
And a lot of the humor is with the kids, so it's like it's real humor. You know,
Yeah.
I think
happen to everybody.
I
But
tried to make it real, like it's obviously it's about ghosties and things like that, but I've tried to make the there's a difference between being believable and like it's I've tried to kind of keep it true to stuff you'd see, and trying to keep it true to the characters that you kind of meet itself. But it's nice. I don't think I realized. I'm still not sure I know if it is funny or not, but it's just from the reviews that have kind of gone around from people like you guys. I've handed it to. That's kind of when people come back and said, yeah, it's scary, but it's funny too. And I'm like, oh, okay, and it's a good thing, because it's kind of it's a hard one. I think comedy and horror could be hard ones to land, and kind of tricky ones in comics, because it's both of them are timing based, aren't they? So it's kind of and it kind of there's a likability, kind of there's a trust that you kind of put in someone. If you're gonna be willing to jump, you've got to be willing to kind of give yourself your sense of disbelief over. If you're going to be willing to laugh, you've got to kind of there's got to be likability there. So if we can pull off one of those things,
I think in comics you have to trust yourself, because if you think this is funny, then you got to pace the next couple of frames to be not funny. So you have to trust that your joke is going to land where you want it to land, and then kind of lead the breath after it. And that's really tough to do, so well done.
Yeah, it's some tricks, because like I've tried to inject little bits of humor in the Transformers stuff that I've written, but at the end of the day, that's a war without end with alien robots. So every one of them suffering from PTSD of some kind, so it's but also that turn into cars and tape players. It's a problem we can all kind of associate with, but it's stuff like that, kind of where you're especially towards the more dramatic side of Scarehood. And yourself, you kind of you want to you got to know when it's time to be funny, and when it's time to sort of step back and let the kind of the drama land and stuff like that. And that's kind of, I think, something you learn over time, I think.
For me, there is one. I'm not going to kind of go too much into them, because I want to actually keep some of these like amazing. There's a couple of these amazing just visuals of just certain interactions between some of the characters. And I'm not even a parent, but from looking and dealing with kids and having interactions with them, I'm just like, that is so bloody spot on. You know what I mean?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And like it was some of those kind of interactions just made me kind of burst out laughing when I was reading it. You know what I mean? And then just having kind of intrigue as to the kind of other things that are kind of going on as well is absolutely fantastic. So congratulations, Nick.
Thanks so much, James. Thanks so much, both of you. It's an interesting thing having a very young child as a character, because there's not much. You don't have to worry too much about their motivation or their art, because they're little human grenades. Do you know what I mean? That they're so whimsical and mercurial that it's up to you can have a kid character just say something random and kind of take the story in a completely different direction and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's kind of it's nice that I'm just glad that both of you took the time to read it, and B, liked it. So
I like.
Well, I think it's going to be it's like a sneak attack. There's going to be people reading this. Oh, this is about a crash. This is great. And like, wait a minute, I like horror now. How did that happen? I thought I was reading about play school.
Or even worse, people sort of going, "Oh no, I like kids now." That'd be weird. Like if it somehow sort of convinced people that children are,
likes kids now.
I think they're tolerable now. Yeah. That's unfortunately one thing I do feel maybe I need to say, because it's the premise is lighthearted, but it's very much and there's lots of juvenile sort of stuff in it, but it is a comic for older kind of readers and stuff like that. It's kind of it's not a comic for kids, unfortunately. No. So yeah.
It's got tremendous heart. Although I do feel kids would love it.
Yeah,
if they were allowed to read it, they would love it.
Yeah,
I can't say. I mean, we both talked about kind of sneaking looks at. I mean, there's something to be said for sneaking looks at comics and books and anything that you're not supposed to have.
Yeah.
But I'm not legally responsible for that. No. But I think
if my parents had peeked into Vampirella, I would not have been allowed to read that, but that was very influential.
I think your dad would have found reasons to confiscate.
Yeah. But underneath all the glamour and there's such the art and the story.
Yeah.
Fabulous, and I think it's scary that they've got the heart as well. So even if you're the most cynical, horror lover, I think this would chip away at that shell, and it's a very loving story. I think, really.
I hope so. It comes from that anyway. It's definitely a story I couldn't have written 8 years ago. Do you know? Like it's only through kind of owning and operating a child, or them owning and operating you, that you kind of you get on that side. But you know yourself, like, Owen, it's you've got to be truthful, especially when in your case, because you're writing about children a lot of the time for children.
Yeah.
You can't you've got to be straight with them, but you've got to be truthful to, you know, the type of characters they are.
Yeah.
And you can't kind of try and pull the wool over their eyes and kind of sort of say this is what a child should be like, or, you know, it's the reason why your stuff will go, because there's, you know, obviously in the impish fowls, you know, that there's definitely that wish fulfillment that, like, the kids reading it are sort of like, I wish I could actually.
Well, I have a question there actually for you, Owen, based on kind of on that, which is, I mean, being a parent yourself has surely influenced some of your own work kind of down the years, whether that's from maybe some of the initial, because you would have had kids in around the time Artemis Fowl would have been kind of starting to kind of come to the fore, and now with the Fowl Twins and your own two sons, surely you've kind of been able to observe what they've been doing down the years as well, and maybe bring some of that into your own storytelling.
They're more or less experiments, my kids, so I'm just taking notes. And they would say, Father, should I go near this cliff? Just go a little bit closer. So, no, it's been, the thing about the boys, and I'm sure Nick will agree, is that they just come up, they just supply with this stuff all the time. You don't ask for it. It just happens. And one of the tricks to being a writer is to be ready for that, you know, it's very often they will say something. And when I was a young fella, I would have jumped into an argument. Now I'm kind of, that is very good. Say that again. And, you know, so I always get the last laugh. My laugh is, you know, forever. It'll be echoing into eternity. But no, they're brilliant. And my two boys now are definitely the models for the Fowl Twins. Even though they're not fowl and they're not twins, but they just have the basic personality where very often kids born in the same house with the same parents, with the same upbringing, more or less, will have diametrically opposed personalities. And my boys are like that, where Finn is kind of he's, you know, I don't want to say feral, that's too strong, but he's definitely a free spirit, and he's wild and he'll try anything. And then Sean is more reserved and calculating in a good way. And they're both very successful in what they do, but they have completely different approaches to everything. And that's like the twins. Miles is the brain box, and then Beckett is just like Tarzan, but slightly with more abandon than Tarzan. So it's great fun to write it. I mean, I'm just having a blast writing it. So I came off doing Illegal, which was quite a serious graphic novel, which we did a lot of research into forced migration from Africa. So this was a real antidote to that, where I'm just having so much fun. I'm just so enjoying it, and it's great it's a real test, I think. Do you want to go to work in the morning? And if you want to go in, then I know I'm onto something if I'm looking forward to getting out to the office in the mornings. So, so thank you, kids.
Yeah, thanks very much, kids. I mean, that kind of pretty much leads us nicely onto the segue that is the Fowl Twins. I have a lovely signed edition here, Mr. Eoin Colfer. This is book number 1, but this October 20th, I think it is. So you guys both have a lovely October release. 20th of October is when the second Fowl Twins book, Deny All Charges, is going to be coming out. So I was trying to recap, right? They've so far been chased by an evil duke searching for infinite life. We've had an interrogating nun who has been trying to capture not only some magical creatures, but ultimately the Fowl Twins. And they've been shot at, there's been explosions, there's been chases and speedboats. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to expect from Deny All Charges.
Well, basically, the plot is almost secondary. It's kind of just an excuse for me to do wordplay. But because there's been so many adventures now, I think this is the 12th Fowl family adventure. So you really have to try to come up with something new. So in this book, Miles and Beckett get into trouble because they take their dad's jet out for Spain and crash it. And so they are now banned from all interaction with the fairy people, which is a big problem for them because their best friend is a troll, a little toy troll. He's only 6 inches high, called Whistleblower, because his Beckett once heard that someone who squealed was called a whistleblower, and doesn't know what a troll makes, so decides he's going to call. And in this, I like to do little Easter eggs for the grown-ups. So in this, they meet a gang of warrior dwarves, and they are going to kill Miles and Beckett until Miles invokes a very old fairy tradition by which you can be spared if you can complete the three tasks. And this tradition was invoked in Ireland, and it's like a little escape hatch. So it is called the Irish backstop, which I think the adults will appreciate, and the kids will not. Well, it won't make any difference. It's just the Irish backstop. So, but the first, I suppose, we join the story where Beckett has to go. Beckett, who's the crazy one, has to go to his friend Whistleblower, who's the equally crazy troll, and tell him that it's done now. We had a great friendship while it happened, and now we're through. And so that's where we join the brothers. So it's really just nuts. You can just do anything, and if it's funny, it's in. If it's funny and it earns its own place in the book, it's in. So that's my second one, and I'm doing one more, and then I think that will be the end of the Fowl adventures.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I'm too old now. Like I want to move on from childish stuff like leprechauns and onto more serious things like time travel and dragons.
Dragons, exactly.
Grow up and do something.
It's amazing that you mentioned dragons actually, Owen, because Highfire went up in flames at the start of the year, lighting up our social media channels, of course, but also the news over the last week or two that Nicolas Cage is involved in a TV adaptation is one of the greatest news stories to happen in 2020. So you probably can't say anything about it at the moment, but me and Nick will ask you questions and just nod if they're true.
I think it's second only to Meghan and Harry, or is it Harry? That was the first story, and then it's just a little bit under that. Was Highfire. Yeah, I think Nick Cage is ideal. I mean, he's such a charismatic actor, and he's going to do the voice of Highfire, and I think it's his first regular TV thing. So he's on a bit of a renaissance at the moment. So yeah, I think it's going to be great. I mean, it took 20 years for the movie to come out, so I'm not holding my breath, but hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years.
I like the way you called a story about a vodka drinking dragon hiding out in Louisiana Bayou, and who loves Flashdance, normal TV, or a normal TV gig for Nicolas Cage. I mean, this couldn't sound anything more like up his street, really, to be honest.
Yeah, it's true, and he doesn't do stuff that he doesn't want. He does stuff for the fun of it, like he's kind of. I think he'll bring that. Like, I mean, Jesus, yeah, Nick Cage, ridiculous.
It is mad, but these things. I know it's all the deal is done and it's signed. I've known about it for a while, and he's the executive producer as well, which kind of ties him into it, and so it's going to be great. And they've sent me some images of the dragon, which are brilliant. So it's looking good, but it will be at least 2 or 3 years. Even if they start today, it'll be 2.5 years.
Well,
but it is exciting. It's very exciting.
Well, us other two X40ans here are very excited about it anyway, so definitely going to be watching that. Owen, do you have a little bit of deny all charges that you'd like to share with us?
I do have a little bit. I'm not a very good reader. I mean, in my mind, I sound like Pierce Brosnan, but actually, it's a bit more like a Wexford Roland Rat. But I'll do my best. And this is the moment where Beckett goes to Whistleblower and tells him, he's told him now, we have to split up. And then Whistleblower invokes the troll parting ritual, which I will share with you now. It's quite It's quite literary, so you may want to take notes.
Bedtime stories.
So I have to find my. They sat in miserable silence for a few moments, both slightly afraid of how Whistleblower might react. After all, it was conceivable that he might lose control of himself in the manner of trolls and throw a massive destructive tantrum. Whistleblower knew that a year ago this would certainly have been the case, but hanging around Beckett had civilized him a little, pulled his tusks, as the other trolls might say. It seemed like ages since he had done any rampaging, and even longer since he had indulged in the ancient practice of dog wrangling. As a side note, this would be the one and only time that anyone would spend time with Beckett Fowl and come out the other end more civilized. Maybe I do lead a little troll time, thought Whistleblower, but he did not go on a scything spree. Instead, he offered the kernel of a plan to Beckett. Miles might be a dope, but he likes problems, stupid problems like this. Beckett cheered up immediately. That's right. Miles will find a way around this. He loves figuring things out, even if he can't fight. He fights with his brain, countered Beckett. Whistleblower countered Beckett's counter. You can't fight with a brain. I tried that with a sheep's brain, and it exploded on impact. It had zero effect. This was a convincing argument. Brains are squishy, conceded Beckett. But even so, Miles will crack this thing, and we'll be back together soon. Very well, human friend, he said at least. If you have ever have need of me, paint my feeding stone red. And now we must complete the parting ritual as a sign of mutual respect. Beckett perked up. Is the parting ritual our theme song? Are you finally going to sing it? Beckett had composed his theme song for the Regrettables, but had never managed to convince Whistleblower that it was anything but forced and idiotic. No, said Whistleblower, I would rather wear a sweater of worms than sing that song. This is the parting ritual. The toy troll jumped onto his feeding rock, turned his back to Beckett, and stood on one leg. Beckett thought he should at least make an attempt to interpret this more than likely noble symbolism of the stance. I see, he said. Showing your back means you are leaving, but raising one foot means you are always ready to return. Is that right? I bet that's right. No, said the troll. That is completely wrong. When friends part, we allow our winds to mingle. The blend of particles unites us forever. It is very powerful troll magic. Beckett had thought his friends couldn't possibly get any more awesome, but the parting ritual smashed the troll's previous record. Are you saying that we fart at each other to seal the bond of our friendship? That is what I am saying. The mingling of the winds. Beckett felt his eyes tearing up, and they hadn't even begun the ritual. You are the best and coolest friend I will ever have. I know, said Whistleblower, and I appreciate your moderate fighting skills, so I vow never to eat you. Thank you, said Beckett. I don't want to get eaten. Now turn your back, ordered Whistleblower. I will say the sacred words, and then we shall expel wind in each other's general direction, Monty Python. And remember, not turn around until the winds disperse. Beckett did as he was told and tried not to sniffle as Whistleblower was being all stoic about their parting. Whistleblower sent a howl echoing over the flat calm, then recited the sacred verse. Warrior, warrior both loyal and true, the gift of wind I give to you. The particles inside my tongue I blow your way from out my bum. Now that is the poem, thought Beckett, and he stopped thinking as there issued forth from Whistleblower's person a sustained noise that should not have been possible from a colon of the troll's dimensions. The closest auditory equivalent Beckett could think of was a trombone being played underwater, something he had actually tried. A dense cloud of rank air enveloped Beckett, and he knew that he would have to burn his clothing in the garden bonfire on his way back to the house and possibly exfoliate himself in the shower. Well played, old friend, he thought. Only one thing left to do. Beckett Fowl took a breath, stood on one leg, and farted through his tears. It's for the kids. Like,
you proud of
that? Because in every Artemis Fowl book, there's like loads of farting scenes, but I prided myself on never using the word fart. Like I had never used it. And I just totally blew that. It was like when Queen started using synthesizers.
There's no one.
That was exactly the analogy I was going to use.
I thought it was. So yeah, I actually I could have probably picked a non-farty bit, but why?
You're trying to sell this. This is the exact bit. Yeah. And I can see why you're sort of saying, well, look, I can see that the Fowl saga is coming to an end, because where do you go after that?
Yeah, no. I think once you've had the parting ritual with the troll, it's very hard to come back from that.
But even as a writer.
Yeah, that's the apex. Like there's that troll fart, Ulysses.
Direct. That's so good. Yeah. No one writes about farts as poetically as you do, Eoin Colfer.
Or as often.
Write about what you know, isn't it? Is what they say.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I feel
kids. So.
I feel like that little poem is going to end up on posters across every primary school in Ireland, and this pact is just going to become a thing that we're just going to have to endure now as the parting of the winds when we're saying goodbye to people in Ireland.
But I could just see myself like reading it to my own kids and it just being like, well, this is the bit where we have to give up for the night because we're not going to get any more right after that. Like,
no.
So it's kind of.
Well, my dream would be that for every father who reads that to his son, that the kid just farts at him, and that's like, thanks, Dad. And that's my job done, I feel.
I will try and pass on this tradition.
Yeah.
Pass on. Let the winds mingle. It would be a lot less war in this world. People would just.
I think I like the line about that you can't use a brain to fight, but just the pleasingness of you can't use a brain to fight. Okay, so you know that the whistleblower has used it. I used a sheep brain. Well, okay, this is funny, and then the kicker of exploded into bit. It was very pleasing rhythm to that owner.
Yeah,
it's
amazing.
Trolls are very literal.
Yeah,
they're so good, and I can hear. But sometimes kids are so literal when they're speaking to each other as well, and I could literally hear Whistleblower and Beckett just standing there, and all these mad things that they're talking are just totally okay and all make sense. And, and they're just having a totally serious conversation about farting, It's
why a lot of kids kind of relate to Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy for that, because he's quite kind of literal in his sort of like.
When that came out, I was like, did they read? Did they read the first? What's going on here? But I realized it's possibly a coincidence that they have literal people as well.
Yeah.
Disney are your co-workers now. You can hash it out, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they'd let me, maybe they'd let me write a Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's one of the ones which I think you'd be.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good fit for that.
If we
I draw a good spaceship on, so we should.
If we put it out into the universe right now on this live stream that Eoin Colfer is up for writing a Guardians of the Galaxy book, let's make it happen, people.
I was going to say, let your people talk to my people, but Seamus is my people, so.
Seamus is your people, yeah.
So there you go.
I wish I had people like Seamus.
Yeah.
Seamus is top people.
Nick, I'm actually stuck in a cupboard in Owen's house. If Owen turns his camera, you'll probably see a tiny door where I actually live.
That's my pen, actually. Stop, you're not supposed to have that. You're not supposed to have that pen.
It's an amazing gag if that had been sort of set up that you just passed that sort of like big form.
So guys, look at sure. I'd fight your pen with my pen, good sir. I think everybody is definitely looking forward to both the release of Scarehood this Halloween and also Denial of Charges, which comes out on the 20th of October. So just before we've been chatting now for just over an hour, and just to wrap it up a little bit.
We knew that was going to happen, though. Sorry.
Absolutely, but I want to just ask one or two questions at the end. But before I do, Nick, is there any, in an age where distribution is obviously more difficult, and obviously live events and stuff like that, is there any plans around the release of Scarehood that people will be able to kind of join in on, or should they just keep an eye on your social media for details about the release and stuff like that?
I think keep an eye on it. We're trying to figure out, because of restrictions at the moment. I was discussing it with IDW and various stores over the last 48 hours, actually, because we can't do signings and things like that. But there might be some stores in Ireland that I will be able to have pre-signed stuff that they will be able to sort of sell, but there won't be anything, no actual meet and greets and things. There's also going to be, hopefully with a few stores, I'm going to do it where if you pre-order Scarenthood, You could be in a draw to win some like an original Scarehood sketch from me, but
Right.
it's stuff to be ironed out because we want to make sure that we're kind of keeping the guidelines of kind of passing around sweaty artwork and things like that. That I kind of I don't want anyone sort of even coming into contact with my own sebum, let alone kind of any germs that I may be kind of delivering. So, but I think keep an eye on social media. There's places to like pre-order any comic shop and it has to be a comic shop. Unfortunately, it's the sort of comic that won't be in like a newsagent, since it's got to be like a kind of a comic shop that deals with the distribution of American comics.
Yeah.
There's lots of them online. There's lots of them in Ireland. They like to know in advance, and it helps kind of us as well. So if you want to pre-order, do it that way. If you buy comics digitally, Comixology is the app. It's comics with an X.
Okay.
Ology. If you download that app, you can download multiple comics. I think even at the moment, last week Marvel put every single Black Panther in the wake of Chadwick Boseman's death. They put every single Black Panther. Yeah, Comixology. Every single Black Panther comic is free. So there's even stuff like that. You can get lots of free comics and stuff, and then pay for Scarehood. Is kind of my sales pitch on that.
Yeah, but that's fantastic. That just in case certain people won't be able to go out. You know what I mean? So instead of having a place online where they can still go buy it and enjoy it, come Halloween.
And there's places like, for example, in Wexford where we're from, there's no comic shop, so you can use Comixology there. Or if, for example, there's stores, I know there's like lots of stores like the Big Bang in Dublin do mail order worldwide. They're a really, really helpful comic shop, and they're kind of very inclusive of kind of people who maybe don't use comics that often or buy comics that often. So reaching out to someone like them would be good, because they'll come straight to your doorstep then if you want the physical copy, or
Brilliant.
Because there's plenty of places don't have comic shops, So.
Yeah.
I mean, I always prefer the physical copy, but if you can't, Comixology is a great,
it's good.
Second base, if you like.
It really is.
And has somebody like Guide Review and really high def, so it's worth it.
It is. It's a lovely way to kind of look at comics, because you can kind of isolate panels and sort of spend time with them on their own. But it's also a lot of people use it as a try before you. I mean, you're still buying it, but a lot of people will buy stuff digitally and then splash out on the kind of collection in kind of like the hard copy of it, because I think with comics as well, there is that thing of people like to own what they like to own, So
well, I would often, if I read on Comixology and I like it, then I'll buy it just to have it as well. So I'll do that.
And obviously it can be pre-ordered now. Anne-Marie Whittle here in the comments is just saying that Big Bang Comics there are taking pre-orders at the moment, and I'm sure a lot of the good comic book stores that are going to be stocking this and have access to this will be taking pre-orders like all good bookstores do. And also,
well, fair play to Anne-Marie Whittle, whoever she might be. I thought she had changed her name to Roche when I married her, but nice. It's nice to know she's out there doing the bit, though.
Man, she is your person. She is your person.
Cheeky.
100%. Oh, 100%. But so she's also someone who we have another housemate joining us in the next 2 months. So all sales greatly appreciated on behalf of Anne-Marie Roche, stroke Whittle. So yeah,
absolutely. And
well, that's like that new housemate is like, that's chapter 2 of Scarenthood. You've got the
it's got to be the plot twist, for the next series and stuff like that. It'll be either the reason why there's no next series, because it's going to take up all my time, or why I'm spending more time in my office. So
yeah, absolutely. And Owen, what kind of is your launch plans? Is it kind of similar deal for yourself at the moment with the launch of Denial of Charges? Is it going to be some sort of events that people need to keep an eye out for?
Definitely. I just got a schedule today from our friend Seal. So in October, we're going to have 5 or 6 virtual events with some of the big bookstores in the States. And I'll probably be doing a few with the UK as well. And we're doing a 2-day radio and TV satellite tour. So I'll go into a studio in Dublin, and I'll just sit there for a day or two, and we'll just beam it to various places. So, but there's no, it's like Nick said, there's just no personal stuff at all. I just signed a few thousand book plates, so they went off to HarperCollins. So, but there's nothing you can do really to meet up with the fans. But at least there's this, so people can come on and ask questions. And I feel the bookstores are really rising to the challenge. I mean, they really are. And they're doing whatever it takes to stay open and to to stay in business. So I think the writers are, I'm sure Nick would agree, we're willing to do whatever we can to help make that happen, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of a weird thing, part of the job, because it's not the sort of thing. It's a privilege to do it, because obviously if you're promoting it, it's because you've managed to get something done and made. But it's a weird part of the job that you never sort of see yourself factoring in when you're kind of like writing it or starting off or whatever. But it's definitely something. It's part of the job. It's and people are nice. It's nice to talk to people and meet people and hear from people. So
Well, it is. You're right there. It's a very important point, actually, that you don't consider when you're in your office for a year. Oh my God, I'm going to have to go out and talk to loads of people about this. Why I got into writing was so that I wouldn't have to do that. That I would be able to stay on my own all the time.
Yeah.
But it's part of the job now. You have to try and make yourself as presentable as Seamus, can I say? Really, that's what we should all be aiming for.
No, I know. I'm aspiring to Seamus's hair height and just general kemptness.
He's very kempt.
Yeah,
isn't he?
He's like the third member
of the
Kemp brothers.
Yeah.
Ballet. So well done.
And this is why I came to do this live stream this evening. It was just to get some lovely flattery of a Thursday evening.
You've come from two men who maybe seen better days, Seamus. You are sorry for speaking on behalf of Owen, but
No, thank you. I accept that.
Yeah.
That's the kindest thing anyone's said to me. 15 years. So
to finish up, I have a couple of questions for you guys, just from across Facebook.
Nobody call Whittle. We're not taking any Whittle questions.
No, the Whittles are out.
Whittle's out. We're going to whittle them down.
Whittle's out.
Out. So, first of all,
we're all dead.
First question, actually, that we got in, Nick, you actually covered earlier on, which was about when you were talking about self-teaching yourself and you were self-taught and how you kind of got started there. I think another good question that came in though was, I can't remember if you said it or not, which comes first? Is it the picture in your head or a vision that you have for a story, or is it the actual words on the page that comes first, or is it a bit of a both sides of the brain kind of a thing?
It's a both sides of the brain with me. Because I'm like writing for comics, I kind of need to know the kind of the visual beats of a page. So I'll kind of do like lots of long walks or like really long wasteful showers where I'm kind of just letting, those are the moments that your mind goes blank or whatever. And so the kind of the stories come. But when it comes to the actual, and so I'll write down like probably the outline, the notes will be in kind of text form. But when it comes to the actual sort of what goes on the page, I'm kind of doing like little thumbnail kind of stick drawings to kind of pace it out and kind of let me know, like I need an establishing shot of the school, say. So that's the first time we see this environment. So I'm going to make sure that kind of has plenty of kind of room on the page. Where does that leave me for the rest of the page? And you kind of want to make sure that the end of each page turn is kind of interesting and kind of it lands on a nice point or leads into kind of the next bit. So with me, I think people who are solely writers, they'll write comics and they'll be thinking visually, but they'll be thinking visually kind of via text.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm kind of, my stuff is kind of like, I'll almost kind of, the story I'm writing at the moment, I've written it kind of visually and I'm going to go back and kind of add the dialogue too. So it's weird. I'm very lucky that I'm kind of able to do kind of both, and it's the most productive way for me to do so.
Nice one. So
I've learned writing comics that are not, working with someone.
Yeah.
There's actually a technicality involved in writing comics that you maybe don't have in writing a novel. In that once the creative part is out of the way, you then have to go back and say, right, well, how am I going to set this page up so that the reader's eye goes this way when I want it to go that way?
Yeah.
And so it's a very technical part that people don't realize. I certainly didn't realize it. So yeah, there's another level to making a graphic novel.
There is, and some of it is instinctive, but like lots of bad habits, you can let them kind of creep in and stuff, and you can do it so long that you're sort of like, you kind of realize that like, oh, my actual draftsmanship is becoming on leaps and bounds, but they're your basic storytelling, which you have to have. It's the building blocks of a comic have started to go rusty. So it's kind of, I think an averagely drawn but clearly readable comic is always better than a kind of a beautiful looking comic, but where the person on the left is kind of speaking second, all that sort of kind of like. But this stuff kind of comes to like.
There's an old phrase that a director friend of mine told me, that it's like confusion is death. And I think that is so true in comic books. If it's beautiful, but you're not sure where to look, it's very hard to read that comic book. So
It is.
I've put down books where they looked fantastic, but I wasn't sure, is this a double spread, or
Yeah.
am I supposed to be going here? And people just don't have the patience for that. So it has to be
No, they don't.
really laid out.
As the years went by on Transformers, I try to get better at kind of streamlining the actual shapes of the characters, because they're really hard to read as characters themselves, against, you know, their technical mechanical beings against technical mechanical backgrounds. And anything you can do to help the reader, even if it means kind of simplifying the kind of the shapes a little bit, it's I think that's the stuff that kind of will you know, in something like that will stop people from giving up halfway through.
Yeah.
And is there certain kind of ways of writing on that kind of helps the reader then navigate their way through a story? So flipping this on the head, not bringing in a visual element of it, but maybe it is creating some part of a visual idea, or maybe it's establishing things within a story to help. Because sometimes, I mean, we've all read things that you kind of get a couple of pages in and you kind of get a little bit lost, you know what I mean? So is there...
Well, let's admit, we've all written things like that, you know.
I certainly have. That's why you haven't read anything from me.
If you can make people love your characters, you get a lot of leeway there. So it's like that little thing about Beckett and the farting. If people like that, they'll kind of follow him anywhere, and that is very helpful. So if you can establish a couple of characters very early on that people either hate or love and want to see what happens to, that's very helpful. I always find when I open a book, and it's often a massive fantasy series, and there's like a cast of characters in the beginning, and there's like 40 people, I'm like, oh god, I don't know if I can keep track of all these people.
Yeah, you know, it's there by necessity as opposed to a kind of a flourish. Like, you know, it's because you're going to need to
refer back to this. The older I get, the less inclined to do that.
It's like challenging music, like we were saying earlier on. You know, it's sad to say that you kind of become less inclined to kind of you know, grasp the nettle when it comes to music, when all you want is a cup of cocoa and kind of, you know, something from 1987.
Some smooth jazz.
Yeah.
What was it? No, what was the one you sent me, Seamus? Was it Yacht Rock?
Yeah.
Yacht
Rock is...
Seamus sent me a rock. I thought, wow, this is great. I will never admit this.
When are we starting our Yacht Rock podcast, guys? That's
we're all going to have to get like Miami Vice suits. We're all going to have to get white Lamborghinis, access to boats, and just listen to the greatest 80s soundtrack of all time. Like, if anybody's watching this right now and they haven't found a Spotify playlist called Yacht Rock, it is the greatest ever, and it will just instantly brighten up your day. It's great.
There's a really good BBC 4 documentary, and I think there's a BBC Radio 6 music documentary, audio documentary by Katie Puckrick, all about Yacht Rock, which tells you everything you need to know and kind of gives you your primer for it as well. So I recommend looking for those as well. That's your Friday night sorted out. So.
That's my... that's all I listen to.
It's so good.
Yeah, I do find sometimes Spotify throws up someone that I like, but it's someone modern. But I wouldn't tell my sons about it, because if I said to them, you know, I'm listening to a band I'm listening to at the moment is the Beths. Do you know the Beths? The New Zealand band. They're amazing. If I told my sons I was listening to them, they would stop listening to them, and that's not really fair to the Beths.
Yeah. I came home at the start of this week, and I turned on a playlist called Have you ever listened to any Bardcore, which is those medieval covers of popular songs?
Not yet. I haven't, Seamus.
There's a man with no kids. With no kids, and he has time. Bardcore.
The next time you're listening to anything, or if you're just wanting to just relax for a little bit, you haven't lived until you listen to some like Katy Perry covers in like a lovely medieval loop.
Hate nonny.
It's so good. Listen.
Well, I spent some time.
It's like I kissed a leper and I liked it.
Verily, she did not doth protest. Yeah, it's a. Today we went basic with my little boy. He's 5, and he kind of was asking to listen to some David Bowie and so, but it was kind of basic Bowie, so it was kind of Changes, Starman, and Space Oddity. And it's just, but sometimes when you got to go back and listen to the kind of the entry level Bowie, you're sort of like, He's really good because sometimes you kind of you'll pick the corner of Bowie that's yours and stuff like that, and you'll kind of you lean into some scary monsters or some low. But sometimes you kind of you realize you see a 5-year-old just like wigging out the changes and kind of going play Space Oddity again. I want to know what happens to this astronaut, So it's magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we all have our Bowie.
Yeah.
We all have. I think Young Americans would have been the first time I fell in love with from Bowie. But you're right, Nick. Everyone has their own Bowie,
Yeah, and mine just happens to be medieval.
And stuff about. Sorry, Seamus, what?
I just said, and mine just happens to be medieval.
Yeah, yours is kind of folk. Yeah.
Well,
folk.
there is medieval Bowie. It's like the Laughing Gnome, all that kind of stuff. You could have a little bit medieval Bowie. No problem.
I'll find it anyway. I'm gonna find medieval Bowie.
My little boy is like one of those picture books, of like famous people, and it's like very cutesy sort of. And it's one of those Bowie ones and stuff, and it kind of shows all the various variations of Bowie throughout the years and so on. So he's pointing to each Bowie, and he said, "Play me a song from this Bowie." And so I was playing like a Serious Moonlight Bowie, and I was playing a Thin White Duke Bowie and stuff, So it's kind of wasn't crazy about always crashing in the same car, but that's 5-year-old for So it's kind of not ready to deal with the sort of the kind of the late night underground car park suicide attempts,
No, he's not ready for that. That's I think about 8 or 9.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and tune in next week for our David Bowie podcast with Nick Rose.
Yeah. It follows our yacht rock. All you need is 3 white men talking about the old music that they like.
Absolutely.
And saying stuff like, "I'll tell you what's wrong with the world."
That's so good. Look, we've been online chatting away for an hour and 20 minutes now. So what we're gonna do?
Yeah, when do we get started?
Yeah, actually, we're gonna go live now.
I have to go. We're watching the final of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Can't make
so
that.
I need to know. I
need to go join for Cobra Kai. So that's where.
Yeah. I gotta go put together a sweet new Bardcore playlist. Please look at.
Have a glass of mead and some Bardcore.
Thanks for keeping us young, Seamus. Listen to both of you. Thank you so much because not just with this, but you guys have always been really helped, for giving me a leg up, and kind of giving me airtime and sharing bandwidth on your feeds and stuff like that. Seamus, you're so good at this, and thank you so much. And Owen, seriously, thanks so much for kind of showing me off to your cool friends. I hope I haven't embarrassed you.
Yeah. My friends are as cool as Bill Collins. That's the cool level we're at now. So we get together and talk about dragons.
I'll take it.
Who's your favorite dragon in children's fantasy?
Nick, before we go, is there anything that you want to give it doesn't have to be your own stuff, it can be your own stuff. Is there anything in particular you want to also make people aware of or give a little shout out to before we go?
Just nothing especially at the moment. It's kind of just Scarehood at the moment. I'm working on another thing for something that you can't buy. I think it's a half-past danger Christmas special. I'm working on a kind of a story for that at the moment. But otherwise, it's kind of Scarehood for me. Really, perfect. On behalf of IDW and Chris, our colorist, and Sean, our letterer, and our amazing editor David and stuff like that. Thanks for. Hopefully you'll give us a chance. And it's fun. It's after this, if you've been a kid or you've been a parent and you like ghosties and you want an Irish set folk horror kind of comedy thing, that's Scarehood is the one for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Scarehood is.
We're going to put up some art so you'll be able to see the cover at least, which is amazing. So
but it does mean a lot. It's kind of if I didn't know Owen, I'd still be a fan of him. So it's a huge honor to kind of be on this. So thanks so much for having me.
There's no problem. And Nick, when you get a chance,
let's do it again tomorrow night. We're only getting started.
Exactly. And Nick, when you get a chance, send us over to some sort of pre-order link or maybe something for best possible place for people, because we've got a couple of people writing in just asking about getting it online. So that's coming out. So Scarenthood is coming out on Halloween, being published by IDW, and it's a 4-issue comic series to start with.
4 issues so far. It's a beginning, middle, and end of a story, and if it's all we get to do, that's great. But if more people like it, more people buy it, we get to do more.
I'm sure that'll be no problem there anyway. And Mr. Eoin Colfer, Deny All Charges, comes out on the 20th of October in the UK with HarperCollins, and in the US through Disney Books. Is there anything before we go you'd like to give a shout out to?
Should we mingle the wins, or should we just
Everybody, I'm gonna stand on my back.
I didn't eat the appropriate sort of. I didn't know there's a dietary sort of kind of prescription
we
for
could have
this thing.
prepared. No, just I'm sticking on the one thing for now. So yeah, the Fowl Twins is my main thing. If you're a grown up and you want to read something, then High Fire is probably the one to go for. But yeah, Fowl Twins. Middle of October, the Fowl Twins deny all charges.
Right.
So coming at you, it's very funny, I think. So,
Yeah, definitely. In
October,
October, the winds shall mingle.
Again,
right.
I think if someone could, like, if we need a T-shirt, I think that we should have that verse.
I'm sure Artemis Fowl Confidential is going to be all over the mingling of the winds T-shirt. You know, two little.
They do seem to zero in on that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Nick.
You know your audience. You've done 11 books of market research now. You know.
I think Nick could do a great T-shirt as well. So look at
I'm going to watch RuPaul. So I will.
Slay Queen.
We will talk soon.
Yeah. Thanks very much, guys.
Great to see you.
Bye, everyone. And night.
Bye.